Welcome to the EntreEd Talk podcast, the show by educators, for educators, parents, and the community. We're so excited to bring this to you. I'm Toi.
And I'm Laura, and we're excited to uplift best practices in entrepreneurship education.
And don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe to the EntreEd Talk podcast on whatever platform you listen. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the EntreEd Talk podcast. We are so excited today to have our good friend, Jeff Smith. He works with NACCE, one of our partners. Jeff currently serves as the Director of Innovation and Equity at NACCE. NACCE provides leadership and scalable, sustainable resources to foster entrepreneurial thinking and action in one of the largest entrepreneurial ecosystems in North America. As the Director of Innovation and Equity, Jeff is responsible for providing strategic leadership for the development and implementation of a vision for innovation and equity at NACCE and promoting inclusive leadership as a means for innovation and growth within NACCE, member organizations, and community partners. I had to take a breath. That's a lot of stuff that you have to do, Jeff. Over the last decade as an educator, Jeff has worked to create transformative educational spaces in high schools, community college, a public state university, and a private college. In an administrative capacity, he has led the development and implementation of strategic diversity plans, worked to ensure collaboration across departments, to ensure the campus climate was supportive of diversity, developed initiatives designed to improve student success and reduce attrition rates, and to build authentic and collaborative working relationships with external communities and stakeholders. Jeff is convinced that the 21st century, with its rapidly growing technology, saturation of information, demographic shifts, and increasing cultural diversity, requires that individuals come together to build creative, life-giving, and sustainable communities and cities. He believes it's his life's work to help students, communities, and cities find ways to work together and pursue this common good. That just gave me goosebumps. That's really awesome. So Jeff, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to have you today.
Yeah, thank you all for having me.
This is great. So before we dive into everything, and there's so much to unpack here, can you just tell us a little bit about your personal journey into entrepreneurship, how you got to where you are now with NACCE, like what your trajectory was? Would you share with us?
Yeah, sure. So Toi and Laura, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you all today. And so I'll start off, as you asked, about my trajectory into, being here or working in NACCE. So I'm trained as an applied or clinical sociologist, and I spent a great deal of my career as an educator in high schools, public state colleges, private schools, and community colleges. So it's always been my goal to create these kind of holistic, transformational educational experiences for students. So that required me to embrace the role of what I call an educator innovator. So I had to apply the entrepreneurial mindset in order to develop new educational products such as pedagogy, practices, and programs. Also, as an applied sociologist, I worked with a great deal of students who wanted to make social impact. So as a part of my work, I began helping to develop student social entrepreneurs. So this work, along with my administrative work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, led me to NACCE. NACCE's focus on entrepreneurship, innovation, and equity made it seem like a natural transition into my role as Director of Innovation and Equity. So.
Super cool.
Wow. That's a huge load for me to take in. And I'm hearing you talk, Jeff, and first of all, it's fun to have a friend on, so thank you. I'm looking at all these different entities that you have worked within, and I'm curious, tell us a little bit more about the connections between you've done public, you've done private, you've done nonprofit, all across the board. What do you find are some of the similarities, and what are some of the life lessons you've taken from one job to the next?
Yeah, so I grew up in a home that was where my dad was, a Southern preacher. And so anyway, he involved us in a lot of different community efforts. So we went on Saturday mornings, we went to, nursing homes. We went to he participated in like prison ministries and also did work for, it was called a Restoration Ranch, which was a drug recovery place. So anyway, I grew up in a home that was all about service. And so for me, one of the things that I was really, really interested in as far as my career is how do I actually serve people? How do I kind of follow in those same steps of like servant leadership that my dad, my mom, and our family kind of raised us up on. So each of these entities for me, particularly the nonprofit area arenas, have given me an opportunity to really engage in that servant leadership. So, teaching at a private school that was mission-based was really about, having the opportunity to work with students who were seeking to be world changers. And so I was very inspired by that. Working at the community colleges gave me an opportunity to serve a group of students who were wanting to also impact their communities, whether that was through the workforce development and development of skills within their communities to be able to make a large impact. And so in that way, a lot of the areas that I found myself in has been similar in that they were mission-based and that they sought to serve. So there have been a lot of similarities in the spaces that I found myself.
Oh, I don't know which direction to go in, Jeff, because there's so much stuff to talk about. So I'm curious, as you're relatively new to your role at NACCE. Could you share? You don't have to say EntreEd, but could you share with us one of your favorite projects that you're working on? Because you have so many in your scope. But could you just share a little bit about something you're working on that's really cool and really pushes your innovation, your educator innovation brain?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I'm most excited about is I'm definitely very excited about EntreEd. No doubt about that.
Good answer.
Let's get that out of the way. Definitely excited about that work. And, oftentimes I get an opportunity to share that out as we talk about our partnership. But one of the things I'm also excited about is our maker space, our Makers Fellow program. So many of our community college partners have begun to draw inspiration from the makerspace movement as they're looking for ways to prepare students for the future of work. So the makerspace movement, as you all know, honors passion, creativity, and the ability for human beings to solve problems. So this movement also promotes diverse, talented individuals coming together to pursue the common good. So college educators have come to value each of these dimensions of the makerspace movement as they look for new educational models that will allow them to educate and train a creative citizenry and really, and develop them for the 21st century workforce. So a lot of these educators understand that the workforce is increasingly characterized by emerging technologies and that these disruptions will require students to be innovative and entrepreneurial. So consequently, NACCE has committed to partner with our community colleges and support them in building a makerspace ecosystem in higher education. And so I'm really excited about that work. We're actually getting a Makers Fellow in partnership with Citizen School that's going to help us build the capacity for this work. One of the specific ways that we have sought to support our colleges in this effort is through Makeshift Conference. And as you know, we were supposed to host Makeshift in Idaho in June, but due to COVID, the event has been postponed until May 2021. But we have, decided to do a virtual Makeshift conference, and it's going to be July 20 through Friday, July 24th. It's going to be 2 daily webinars using Zoom, focused on a variety of relevant, practical, and insightful topics surrounding the maker community. Working with Makeshift and the Makers Fellow and the kind of Makers Center movement is one of the projects that I'm super excited about.
That's awesome. And everybody, please go check out that virtual conference. especially on the 21st, there's a really cool lady that's going to talk for a few minutes. Her name rhymes with toy. Just kidding. But no, seriously, check out the Makeshift Conference, because it is really, I think it's really going to be a cool virtual experience for everybody. But yeah, Jeff, thank you for sharing that. And I know Laura has a question to ask, but I really love that you guys are highlighting the fact that the maker movement in general, and how that it really does connect with entrepreneurship. I mean, it's like peanut butter and jelly, really. You can't have maker spaces without the entrepreneurial mindset. So I'm glad that that's a big initiative for you and for NACCE. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Jeff, it is interesting. The more we talk to people, the more we learn about maker spaces or fab labs. I know a lot of high schools also are moving in that direction. It's very exciting. And I guess one of my thoughts for you, because you're on the pulse of it, is what do you see are some of those challenges that both high schools and mostly community colleges in your realm, but also high schools you see in trying to shift the ways they do education, shift it into this maker space? What do you think colleges are facing, and how do you support that?
Yeah, I would say one of the challenges that the makerspace movement addresses is honestly some of the student success inequities that community colleges experience. So, we see these gaps of student success as it relates to race, ethnicity, or geographical location, like being from certain areas of the country. And so makerspaces seek to oftentimes try to address that by inviting a group of diverse individuals from different backgrounds to think about problem solving. And so a lot of the methods that they use are actually connected to high impact practices or student engagement practices that encourage student success. And so some of the challenges that are being addressed are, some of those inequities, and they're stepping in and actually trying to create educational models. I would call it innovating for equity. And so they have the opportunity to use these new engaging educational models to help ensure that a group of students who have experienced historically inequities, student success inequities, that they come along and, they're able to take part of, of the new workforce. And so those are some of the exciting ways that these spaces are innovating to address some of these challenges.
Can I ask you a quick question as a diversion from that? And I know we're going to talk about resources a little bit later in the podcast, but are there places you can point people to on your website that might, give them how-tos or things about makerspaces?
Yeah, we have a center of practice that is, is focused specifically on makerspaces. So if you would get on our website, www.nacce.com, and go to our centers of practice, and you'll be able to scroll down to the Making Center of Practice, and it tells quite a bit of information about the work we're doing, but also about some of our partners like Citizen School and the work that they're doing. So people can become familiar with that work and also join in, as a member potentially of that center of practice, where we bring together practitioners, people who are seeking to, to innovate in their space and give them best practices and tools that will enable them to do so successfully.
Awesome. And Jeff, can you explain a little bit about what is Citizen School? Because I don't really know that I'm familiar with that. It sounds cool.
I totally agree. Citizen School is a great partner of ours. So Citizen School, along with our community of practices, as I spoke about, we are getting to do have what we call a Makers Fellow. And so Citizen School is an organization that's been around for nearly 25 years, and they have pioneered in educational equity. So since opportunity, unlike talent, is not equally distributed. They've provided hands-on learning experiences that ignite curiosity, build confidence, and expand horizons for over 50,000 underrepresented middle school students and others. So they focus on creating maker-centered learning available and accessible to both middle school, high school students, college students, and beyond. And so they're really, advocates of the maker-centered learning pedagogy, and they provide tools, they provide, practices, and also provide partnerships that will allow schools and also community organizations to begin to embrace, the maker-centered learning pedagogy.
Awesome. That's a really valuable resource. And so I encourage everybody to check out your centers of practice as well, because I know that Laura and I, when we're working with the K through 12 population, we have a lot of teachers especially with the EntreEd, with the grants and our initiative, that have decided to build a makerspace in their school. And that's kind of daunting, especially to an educator that's never done that before. And I'm assuming that even at the community college level, that can be kind of daunting to transition from more of a traditional model to this, what could be organized chaos model of maker spaces, and how do I assess that, and how, what are the artifacts, what are the outcomes, those kinds of things that educators need to have, but in a maker space, it looks a little bit different. So I encourage everybody to look at those resources and see that it is a task, an undertaking, but it's not as daunting as one may think, and it can look different in every single setting. So Laura, you were going to say something? Sorry, for everyone listening, our internet was wonky, so we can't see each other as we normally do. So we don't know who's getting ready to speak. So it's a lost country right now.
We're in the dark, literally. Jeff, like you have had the beauty of living in a lot of different states. You've recently transitioned from Tennessee to North Carolina, which are close by, but may have a different landscape. And you've been in a lot of different places. And like I said earlier, a lot of different types of businesses or, nonprofits and things. I'm curious, a couple of different things. What do you see as the landscape in general with community colleges from where you've been? And then also now with your association with NACCE, what are some of the areas that are really innovative in parts of the country that everybody should be keeping their eye on?
There are so many to name, and there are people doing, very innovative things in different parts of the country. One of the places that, and this is just because, most recently where I've had an opportunity to visit before COVID crisis was Tallahassee, Florida. So Tallahassee Community College, which is one of our partner schools, they are doing some very just amazing work with innovation. There's so many other colleges to name, but as I said, that's kind of fresh on my mind because we did a higher education task force there, and we brought together people from private industry, from government, from community organizations, from higher ed, and the whole point of that task force was for us to really, encourage innovation within the educational space. So it was really focused on using design thinking. It was focused on giving, both administrators, faculty, government officials, many of the stakeholders an opportunity to come in and to have a voice in innovation in the educational space, and also to think about what are some of the ways that, for lack of a better term, the traditional approaches might lend themselves to change and to new ideas, and why that might be very, very necessary as we see the workforce changing. And so that's just an example of some of the work we do around supporting innovation, but also the many schools that we partner with who are really taking these innovative approaches.
Oh, Awesome.
One comment for our next question is, it is amazing to see how everybody's risen to this very odd occasion and the necessity to come together. And I think the whole point, Toi and I talk about it a lot, of this podcast is to raise up those amazing stories across the country and even beyond. We're starting to go a little bit beyond the U.S., but it's fun. It's inspiring to see the Tallahassees and the other people out there doing amazing work. And yes, I'm glad NACCE's there to support it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting work.
I've had the pleasure, and NACCE sort of skyrocketed in the past several years. And I've just been excited to watch Rebecca Corbin's journey through this, and you guys and her whole team. I think what you're doing is really amazing work. It's funny that and very poignant that when we talk to people, Laura and I, almost every success story with the school, whether it's a college or K through 12, whatever, starts with that exact thing that you just shared, that getting all of the stakeholders together and not just trying to figure new things and come up with ideas in a silo. And it's that community that really drives amazing change. And I don't know that there's been one single podcast that wasn't mentioned. And when we talk to these awesome educators, then it's listening to the stakeholders from, government, the higher ed, the K through 12, general businesses in the community, that whole thing. And so not wanting to use the term ecosystem, but it really is.
It really is. It is.
That word is starting to be the low-hanging fruit, if you will. Like, that's seen that term.
That is
But it is really, it's overused because it is very important.
Very important. And honestly, that's one of the things that really drew me to NACCE was the focus on, or one of the focuses on, ecosystem building, because to me that it gives me an idea of thinking about who are the various stakeholders and what are the gifts and talents that each of these individuals and entities bring to the table, and how can we collectively, work together to be able to create stellar products, services, and to also work to help our communities thrive. And so that spirit of that, coming together, come let us reason together kind of idea is very, very inspiring to me. So I agree. Like, I really like ecosystem language as well.
It really is amazing at what, for so long in kind of the traditional education model, there's been this huge disconnect, right? Yeah. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about the community college system, because they're the ones that they're a little more nimble than some other systems, and they can do this. And I think that we're starting to see, Jeff, like you said, the shift that you're helping with and with the community colleges. And I think that's sort of starting to spread in several directions, and the K through 12, and even the more brick and mortar larger college systems are starting to see that too and go, oh, it's working in community college, that we can do it too. We can make these shifts. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I'll say one more thing about just the different ways that, talking about the different colleges, but just some of the differences we see that are very interesting is, some community colleges approach entrepreneurship from the point of view of the curricular. So the approach is focusing on degree programs, while others have co-curricular focus. And so you have the credit degree program, but then you also have the non-credit certificate programs. But there are also colleges that focus on entrepreneurship through student clubs. And Club Z is one of the student clubs that approach entrepreneurship in a way that, and we try to highlight that. So we highlight that through one of our student engagement centers of practice. So Club Z is out in Arizona, Paradise Valley. But Club Z is defined as this fun, creative, and innovative student success club where strivers and thrivers work toward individual and team goals to prepare for entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and life aspirations. So it's actually designed to allow entrepreneurship programming to be infused across the curriculum and throughout the organization, rather than being perceived as an activity belonging in the business department. So one of the primary ways that we promote is a comprehensive approach that includes each of these approaches. And so how can we do the both and? And so it's very interesting to see the unique ways that they approach, that many of the colleges approach entrepreneurship, but it's also equally exciting to see when there's this comprehensive approach, when there's both and you see entrepreneurship infused throughout the entire institution, not siloed in one location, but it's very much, infused throughout the entire school.
That's so cool. We got to interview some of the Club Z young men and women when we were out in California last summer. Oh my gosh, was it last summer? It was so cool. One girl just brought the house down. She had such a powerful story, and it was really cool. We did an on location podcast collab with NACCE, and we got to talk to those kids. It really neat group of folks, and you can see that how entrepreneurship has changed their lives. So very cool.
I was going to mention quickly, Jeff, I totally agree with where you're coming from. And I think there's so much power, and I hesitate using that word because sometimes we associate that negatively, but power within community colleges for their community education divisions and their workforce divisions, because those, from having worked in that program and directed that program for a community college, there's so much gain from a certificate that then could lead into a 2-year degree if they want it, then lead into a 4-year if they want it, and beyond. But I think you're right for colleges to be able to look at all entities of what they provide and see that those certificate and that community education is a fabulous place for many people to land.
Before we kind of wrap up for this podcast, we always like to ask this question, and that is, what advice might you give an educator, whether that's a community college faculty member or even a K through 12 or anyone? You can pick anyone you want. What advice might you give an educator who wants to be inspirational in the entrepreneurship space?
I would say lead by example and teach, out of the entrepreneurial mindset. We talk a lot about the entrepreneurial mindset, but, I think we have an opportunity to really practice that in the way that we educate, the way that we teach, the way that we engage our peers, other faculty members, administration. And so I think there are, lead by example, find allies across the silos of student, like in a community college or a 4-year college, and even at, K through 12, find those allies across silos. Oftentimes in the kind of higher ed space, there are silos of student affairs and academic affairs, silos of disciplinary orientations. If you teach in a business department, reach out to those people in the social sciences and the physical sciences and really put on display for students the entrepreneurial mindset within the context of that organization. And in doing so, you're literally creating a learning community, a community of practice, and a mentoring community for those students, not just to be given information about conceptualizing the entrepreneurial mindset, but they'll have the opportunity to really engage in a community of practice where they can embody those things as a part of the lived experience in that institution. And they literally have the opportunity to experience transformation just by being a part of that community. And so anyway, that would be some of the advice that I would give educators.
That's phenomenal. That's a lot. Toi and I came up with this wonderful idea of quoting some of those answers in some of our future trainings. So, you will see you quoted in your future in some of our trainings. I'm really happy you're a colleague, Jeff. I mean, it's folks don't know, we get to see Jeff pretty often on Zoom, and it's just been fun to brainstorm with you and to get to know you better. And I'm looking forward to all the things that you've talked about that hopefully EntreEd and we can support you guys in all of your initiatives. So thank you. How do people, we've mentioned before, how do we get in touch with you? But can you say it again so we know about your makeshift coming up and your maker spaces? How do people connect with you and NACCE?
Yeah, you can just contact me at smith@nacce.com. So that's smith@nacce.com.
Great. Okay. I know people will reach out. This has been fun, Jeff. Again, we were teasing that you're Batman and we wanted to get to know you better. So thank you for the time.
Jeff, again, thank you so much. And we're just so excited that you were able to join us today.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.